welcome back, and today we're going to be recapping my second Sinister Cup tournament. This was actually my ranked tournament, and it was a 5-round tournament in my hometown. For the team that I decided to bring to this tournament, I'm rocking with Poliwrath and Steelix, Drifblim, Alolan Marowak, Bronzong, and Medicham. All of these Pokemon are running pretty standard movesets, except my Poliwrath I'm running Dynamic Punch and Ice Punch, simply because Power Up Punch didn't seem to do that much in the way of helping me in my first tournament. In addition to this, my Medicham is also running Psychic and Power Up Punch. So here we go, round number 1. My opponent in round number 1 is Lobster X. This is a very young trainer, and he's rocking with a very interesting team here. Latias, Mr. Mime, Chimecho, Poliwrath, Hitmonlee, and Mismagius. For our first battle, I'm running Marowak, Bronzong, and Drifblim, and he's going to lead with his Poliwrath here. From team preview, his Poliwrath looked like the strongest Pokemon in his team. So I'm going to go ahead and just switch in here to Bronzong to take what I thought was a Power Up Punch, and it ends up being a Dynamic Punch. So that takes about half of the health of my Bronzong, but that's okay. These confusions are really going to catch up to this Poliwrath if he doesn't switch out, and he doesn't, and he gets back to a Dynamic Punch. So I'm going to go ahead and throw up a shield here because I've got energy loaded on this Bronzong, and from team preview I also know Bronzong is going to be pretty solid against his team. His best counter to it is this Mismagius, so I'm going to go ahead and throw the Psyshock. And Psyshock's going to take a shield from him. So now that I've got a shield down, I've got another Psyshock coming. So he's going to either have to choose to use his last shield here or take some pretty good damage. So big neutral damage from that Psyshock goes through. And I'm going to come back with Marowak and hit the Bone Club. See if I can force another shield out of him, or just go ahead and wipe down this Mismagius. So he decides to shield, and now I'm basically within farmable range. I do need to throw up a shield here. I don't want to be taking Shadow Ball from this thing. And he sends Dazzling Gleam, so I'm pretty suspicious at this point that maybe his Mismagius doesn't have Shadow Ball on it, which is actually a really good thing for my team. So he comes back with his Hitmonlee, and I'm going to go ahead and throw a Shadow Ball at that, and Hitmonlee is going to go down. For our second battle, I'm got the same team on me. I just switched Bronzong to a lead because he led with Poliwrath last time, and his Poliwrath is his strongest Pokemon on his team, it looked like. So Bronzong's just going to come in, and he comes back with Mismagius. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw this Psyshock since I got farmed up on that Poliwrath. And Psyshock's going to go ahead and take a shield from him. So now I'm thinking about switching, and I pretty much knew that his Mismagius only had Dazzling Gleam, so I'm going to go ahead and take a resisted Dazzling Gleam on my Bronzong and try to get off another Psyshock. So this is basically just trying to take his final shield from him. And we don't get it. He lets Mismagius go. So this is pretty good for me. And his third Pokemon is Hitmonlee. So I've got 2 ghosts in the back, so I let Bronzong go down. And this is actually a pretty funny moment. I'm just trying to charge up a ton of energy on my Drifblim because I didn't think he had anything to threaten me. And he comes back and hits me with a Stone Edge. So that one-shots my super powered up Drifblim, my supercharged Drifblim. And I knew that Hitmontop had access to Stone Edge, but I actually didn't know that Hitmonlee got Stone Edge. So that was actually a really cool play from him, and an off-meta Pokemon, and it put in work for him. So now we're in here with Alolan Marowak versus this Poliwrath, and I've got a shield advantage, so I'm going to go ahead and send the shield bait, try to take his final shield from him. Alright, and then now this opens me up to throw a Shadow Ball, and he's only throwing Dynamic Punches at me, so I don't need to use any of my shields. I used one earlier on the Dynamic Punch just in case it was like a Hydro Pump or something coming through. And Shadow Ball's going to finish off his Poliwrath here. And that was the end of game number 2. For our match number 3, I'm using the exact same team, except now I wanted to give Drifblim a chance to lead. And he leads with Latias, which is a really interesting and fun pick here. But I noticed his Latias is not running Charm. So I'm going to charge up a bit and throw an Ominous Wind, and Drifblim's pretty safe to stay in this matchup because Charm damage isn't really going to catch up to him. and I get the first shield, and I also happen to get the boost. So boosted Drifblim is an absolute monster in this cup, and I didn't want to risk taking a Thunder here, so I went ahead and used my first shield. And now boosted Drifblim is pretty much just going to farm down this Latias. So Latias goes down, and he's going to come back in with Mr. Mime. I send the Ominous Wind, and I'm hoping to get his first shield from him, or his second shield. I get the final shield, and I'm already back at a Shadow Ball. So I'm going to Shadow Ball this Mr. Mime, and Mr. Mime's just going to take that one straight to the face and get one hit. And now he comes back with Chimecho, and I'm going to go ahead and send the Ominous Wind. I tried out Chimecho in practice, and I actually kind of liked it, but for me, just way too squishy. So one Ominous Wind there, and Chimecho goes down, and my shiny 1500 Drifblim manages to pick up the sweep. My next opponent is Forever Donut, and he's running Poliwrath, Alolan Marowak, Mawile, Dusclops, Gardevoir, and Steelix, which is a really interesting team setup. So based on team preview, I thought he would be relying on Mawile and Gardevoir kind of as flex Pokemon, and then backing them up with like Poliwrath or Steelix, maybe his Alolan Marowak. So let's get into the battles and see what shakes down. For our first battle, I am running with Steelix, Alolan Marowak, and Poliwrath, and he's going to go ahead and lead with his Poliwrath. I led Steelix because I thought maybe I could catch his Mawile or his Gardevoir, and instead I got Poliwrath, so I switch into my Poliwrath, and he decides to switch into his Steelix, which is still a positive matchup for me. And I throw the Ice Punch trying to shield bait, and then get back to a Dynamic Punch, but he doesn't fall for it, so it's not the best situation for me, because Dynamic Punch takes so long to get to, and I make a really poor decision here. I end up shielding this when I really shouldn't have. Even if it was an Earthquake, Poliwrath would have still had time to get off a Dynamic Punch, which made him respect the shield. So if I had just gone for 2 Dynamic Punches and then not shielded that, I still would have been able to get them off. So I didn't play Steelix quite correctly. So now I don't shield, expecting this to be a crunch, and this is actually the Earthquake. And at this health, Poliwrath can't take an Earthquake. So Poliwrath goes down, but that's okay because now his Steelix is at like a really nice farmable level for my Alolan Marowak. And then I do another stupid move here, just brain dead playing. I went ahead and went shield bait for the Bone Club, but at the health that my Marowak's at and the health that his Poliwrath is at, I could have just hit the Shadow Ball. Even if he shields it, I should have made him respect the Shadow Ball play, because I would have had time to get off 2 Shadow Balls. And instead, his Poliwrath is just powering up, and his bubbles are going to start catching up to me. So this is the worst way you could play Poliwrath. I do another Bone Club. I had Shadow Ball ready, but I did another Bone Club, and I have no idea why I did that Bone Club, because it makes me kind of end up losing this match, because all I have in the back is Steelix now, and his powered up bubbles really caught up to me, and I didn't have time to get off the final Shadow Ball. So that was just absolutely the worst way you can play against the Poliwrath. So he's gonna power up punch my Steelix, and I'm at crunch right now, but I was trying to charge up a little extra, see if I can get a charge move off on his last Pokemon, and I just don't make it. So he was within crunch range, so I had a fighting chance, but I just played that really poorly. For battle number 2, I've switched up my team a tiny bit and brought Bronzong with me to try and help clean up his Poliwrath, because his Poliwrath ended up destroying me last round. And I'm lead with Alolan Marowak, so as long as I don't play it as poorly as I did the last round, my Marowak's going to be okay. I'm just going to take all of these power-up punches, because I'm assuming he's running power-up punch and ice punch. So this time I go straight for the Shadow Ball, and he's got to respect that. So he's going to go ahead and use his first shield, and I'm going to charge up a tiny bit of energy, and Marowak's safe to stay in here and take these charge moves. So I'm taking his energy right now, and then I'm going to come back with Bronzong, and I get off 2 confusions, which chunks his Poliwrath down nicely. And then he comes back with Marowak, which is not great for me, but it's also not the worst, because I have a Bulldoze right here. So this is either going to KO that Alolan Marowak, or it's going to take his final shield. So, and then I kind of make a mistake right here. I could have let Bronzong go, but after the first match, I want Bronzong for that Poliwrath, so I commit to shielding it. and he doubled up bone clubs, so I'm already committed. So now I've got to burn 2 shields on my Bronzong, and now I'm racing this Marowak to the Bulldoze, and I'm scared right here I'm going to get knocked out by Fire Spin, so I pulled the Side Shock, which is really bad, because I had time to get off that Bulldoze as long as I didn't overtap, and his Marowak ends up living. So now that his Marowak has 1 HP, I come in with Steelix thinking it's safe to do 1 hit and get some energy on my Steelix, but instead he has a Bone Club. So it's a totally unnecessary Bone Club from that Marowak. So my Steelix has already been damaged, and he comes back with Poliwrath, and he immediately power up punches me. So just letting that Marowak live with 1 HP was, kind of set up this chain reaction here. And then I played Marowak really stupid again and didn't go straight for the Bone Club. So now all I have left is Steelix versus his Poliwrath. So his Poliwrath play is really giving me trouble, and I'm just playing it really stupid and not making the right decisions. So he's going to go ahead and just bubble down my Steelix, and that's the end of game 2. For game number 3, I bring my Drifblim and my Bronzong as well as my Poliwrath, and I feel like now that I'm not running scared of his Mawile or his Gardevoir, I'm playing a little bit more loose, and this is just better team composition. My Marowak wasn't cutting it against his team, so having this Ominous Wind option on Drifblim just matches up a lot better for me. So he's going to take Ominous Wind to his Marowak, and then I'm just going to not use a shield here and just risk taking a Shadow Ball. It was a Shadow Ball, and he ends up wiping my Drifblim, but that's okay because now Poliwrath has a real fighting chance against this Marowak. He decides to save it and come back with Steelix. So I'm going straight for the Dynamic Punch here, and I don't manage to pick up the Excellent on the swipe minigame, and I think if I had gotten the Excellent, I would have been able to bubble him down before he got to this Crunch. So I kind of make a stupid decision to just shield this Crunch here. Not the best decision, but no matter. We're going into, he has 2 Pokemon left, and one of them is that Marowak at super low health, and his final Pokemon is Poliwrath. So I know I have Bronzong in the back, so I'm going to be in a really good position after I hit this Dynamic Punch. So I was expecting a shield there, so I would have been able to farm him down with Bronzong a little better, and then have shields down for that Marowak. But he comes back with Ice Punch. He has nothing that can really threaten my Poliwrath, so that's my ace in the hole. And then I'm going to go ahead and farm him down with Bronzong, and then send the Side Shock, but he gets to a Bone Club first. I didn't need to send the Side Shock, but he had shields on the board, so I didn't want to let him finish the game with any shields. So here comes the Side Shock, and overall, this third game I played way better, just not making those stupid mistakes that I made in the first 2 matches, but he ends up winning the round, so GG Forever Donut. In round number 3, I matched up against Kaylee 2022, and she's running with Poliwrath, Mawile, Drifblim, Steelix, Alolan Marowak, and Claydol. And between Mawile and Claydol, I like Claydol a lot, matched up with Mawile on this team. So let's get into the battles and see how we deal with it. So for battle number 1, I'm running with Marowak, Poliwrath, and Drifblim. And against this team, I found myself being mad at myself for playing so stupidly in the last round, so I find myself playing really aggressive here and taking out a little bit of anger on this next trainer. So I play really aggressive, but I also feel like I played pretty cleanly. So she leads with Mawile, and I don't need to shield anything that this Mawile has. So I'm going to go straight for the Shadow Ball here. So if I can get the Shadow Ball landed, that's really big damage on this Mawile. And if not, I'm going to be able to get back to a Bone Club. So she goes ahead and shields the Shadow Ball, and I thought about switching, but that's okay. I knew I can get back to this Bone Club, so trying to get back to the basics here and just play the way that I like to play and know how to play. So she's going to come in with Drifblim. That gives her a one move energy advantage on my own Drifblim, so I'm not going to try and send any moves. So anything this Drifblim's sending at me, I pretty much need to shield, but it's okay, I'm still up shields, and she uses the Shadow Ball. So I know that gives me a little bit of time here to charge up enough energy so that I can send 2 Ominous Winds before she can send another charge move. So I take her final shield with that Ominous Wind, and I'm back to another Ominous Wind. And so doubling up Ominous Winds there gives me a really good advantage on this other Drifblim, and her Drifblim gets down. Now my Drifblim gets the boost, and boosted Drifblim here is going to be able to survive long enough to hit this Shadow Ball on Steelix, and boosted Shadow Ball is not a joke, even against the Steelix. Really huge damage, and then I hit the switch just in time to take a crunch from this Steelix. So I played that match real aggressive and really clean, and I end up just punching her Steelix into the ground. For battle number 2, I'm just running with the exact same team because I like this team against her set so far. So she leads with Claydol. Claydol's a little bit of a problem for my team, but the only thing I need to do to prepare for it is basically know that I'm going to have to shield some Earth powers. So I go ahead and send the Bone Club, and I even swipe to try and make it look like a Shadow Ball. And that works, so that I get the shield bait and I take her shield. So I know I can get back to a Shadow Ball here if I just spend one shield. So I spend the shield on the Earth Power. Now that's taking that Claydol's energy away from it, and I get to a Shadow Ball, and then I'm just going to go ahead and switch into my Drifblim, because if she sends another Earth Power or an Earthquake, Drifblim's going to be able to handle it. She comes back with Marowak, and I get off the Ominous Wind. So Ominous Wind is going to take her final shield, and because of that move, now Drifblim's pretty much free to hit some Shadow Balls. So Shadow Ball here, and Shadow Ball's going to be able to take down her Marowak, and she has no shields to protect herself. So Marowak's done, and she's going to come in with Poliwrath here, and I know I can get to a Shadow Ball before she gets to an Ice Punch. So Shadow Ball's going to come out, and Shadow Ball's going to put her Poliwrath at critically low health. So Shadow Ball goes through, and Poliwrath's already in the red. So Drifblim's done a great job here, and I let Drifblim go. And then we hit some lag as, I guess, CMP is trying to figure itself out. And I make a little bit of a mistake here in shielding this. I could have survived anything except the Hydro Pump. So I wasted a shield there, and I hit the Bone Club. And I'm hoping that I can hit Bone Club and then another Bone Club on that Claydol in the back. But instead, because I used the shield, now she's going to be able to get off an Earth Power. But that still works for me because I want to waste this Claydol's energy. And by wasting this Claydol's energy, it's going to have nothing to stop my Poliwrath in the back from getting to this Ice Punch. So either way I played that, even though I used the shield maybe a little prematurely, I still get to the Ice Punch, and that's going to knock down her Claydol. So that's the end of match number 2. For our third and final match, I've switched up my team a little bit, and I'm running with Steelix, Drifblim, and Bronzong. So I lead with Steelix here, maybe expecting that Mawile to come back, but she leads with Drifblim. This is still pretty good for me. I'm going to throw a Crunch and put on some shield pressure. So Crunch is going to go ahead and take her first shield from her, and then she's going to throw a Shadow Ball at me. And Steelix is okay with taking one Shadow Ball as long as I don't take 2. So I'm going to be able to get to another Crunch here, but she swapped out a little bit too early, and I saw that Poliwrath come in, so now I'm going straight for the Earthquake. So if she had swapped out maybe 1 or 2 fast moves a little bit later, I would have hit her Poliwrath with a Crunch instead of an Earthquake. But that's okay because I have Bronzong in the back anyway. So this Bronzong is just going to be able to take an Ice Punch here and then farm down her Poliwrath and give me a little bit of an energy advantage on whatever's coming in next. And she comes back with Drifblim, and I know Psyshock is going to do quite a bit of damage to this Drifblim if I can get it off. So I choose the shield, and she actually goes for the Shadow Ball. So I know that gives me a little bit of extra time, so I hit one more Confusion and then the Psyshock. Now this Psyshock is going to put on the shield pressure and make her use her final shield. So I'm pretty safe here as long either Ominous Wind or Shadow Ball would kill my Bronzong, but I determined that, just using a shield, and then I would be able to farm down this Drifblim, giving my Bronzong enough energy to hit a Bulldoze on her Steelix in the back. So this is pretty much free damage for me, and Bulldoze doesn't do a ton of damage, but it chunks down Steelix quite nicely. And I'm trying to switch out here just so my Bronzong doesn't get farmed up, but she actually goes ahead and pulls the Crunch. So this is really good for me because I'm taking her energy from her, because I guess she was scared I was going to get to another Bulldoze. So I just come back with Drifblim, and I get a little bit of a switch glitch, but that's okay. Drifblim can survive a Crunch here. and then Driplim's going to be able to make it to a Shadow Ball, and Shadow Ball is going to kill her Steelix. So Shadow Ball goes through, and that is the end of round number 3. My next opponent is Regilope, and Regilope has Medicham, Bastiodon, Empoleon, Steelix, Dusclops, and Marowak. So a really interesting team here. I noticed first off that he does not have a Poliwrath on his team, and he has 3 Steel types, so I feel like my Poliwrath is going to be pretty strong for me here. He has no Confusion user, so his only Psychic option is if his Medicham is running a Psychic move. So let's get into the battles. For our first battle, I'm running with Poliwrath, Drifblim, and Steelix, and I know that my Poliwrath is pretty much going to be strong against his team, so I catch his Bastiodon off lead, so he's going to switch out immediately, and he switches into Dusclops. Now, I could play this out with my Poliwrath, and we would basically go back and forth on charge moves and just chunk each other down, which takes quite a long time, but I know I have Steelix in the back here. I contemplated going in with Drifblim to try and put more shield pressure on him, but Steelix's crunches are going to do just fine at putting on shield pressure, and I'm also going to be able to take a couple of these fire punches even though they're super effective. So the first crunch comes out from my Steelix, and he's going to go ahead and shield that. So I know I don't need to shield anything from him, and I'm going to be able to get back to another crunch. So that's really going to put the shield pressure on him. And Dusclops is running the Feint attack, it looks like, so he does have a little bit of an advantage in this matchup, but that's okay because I still have Drifblim, so I just need to get him at like a farmable level. So I was waiting, I thought I had my switch back, and it wasn't quite true, and here's where I make a mistake. I should have just let my Steelix go at this point, but I kind of wanted to win this matchup, so he goes ahead and switches into Marowak nicely, and just farms down that Steelix. So now his Marowak has quite a bit of energy on it from farming down that Steelix, and I know he's still got Bastiodon in the back, so I come in with my Drifblim, and I know Drifblim needs to win here, so I'm not going to risk taking a Shadow Ball, so I spend my final shield, and because of that, and he spent 2 shields on his Dusclops, I'm going to be able to hit his Marowak with a Shadow Ball, and Shadow Ball is just going to wipe out his Marowak, and his final Pokemon is Bastiodon, so I'm going to hit another Shadow Ball on Bastiodon. He still has his Dusclops in the back, but it's got a tiny amount of health. So Shadow Ball is going to go through, and I get greedy here, and I thought I could make it to an Ominous Win, and I die 1 fast move short of an Ominous Win. And then he's going to come back with Dusclops, which I don't think is the right play in this move, because this Dusclops can't really threaten my Poliwrath as much as it needs to, and I'm going to be able just to farm up to that Dynamic Punch, which he may not know that I'm rocking Dynamic Punch on my Poliwrath yet, and nothing that this Bastiodon can throw at me is going to kill my Poliwrath from that health, so all I need to do is land this Dynamic Punch, and that's going to take down his Bastiodon and give me the win in battle number 1. For battle number 2, I'm running with Marowak and Poliwrath and Drifblim, and I've dropped my Steelix. I didn't feel like Steelix gave me as much of an edge as I wanted from match number 1, so we're mirroring Alolan Marowaks right now. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the Bone Club and try and shield bait. And he lets the Bone Club go through, so he's going to switch out here, and he goes straight into his Empoleon. And I make a mistake right here. I should have hit Bone Club, because if I stay in this, I could get off 2 Bone Clubs, and he shields that Shadow Ball. So if I got the Shadow Ball, that would have been nice, but it's not the smartest play, because I knew I had Poliwrath in the back here, and Poliwrath can make short work of Empoleon. But now my Poliwrath is going to have to take a Flash Cannon, which is not very effective, but it does huge damage. So now my Poliwrath is pretty safe just to start throwing Dynamic Punches, and that's going to go ahead and wipe out his Penguin. He elected to save his shield, so I'm waiting to see what he has in the back, and he has his Dusclops in the back. So this is a pretty good situation for me. I can just throw as many Ice Punches as I can get to and try to chunk down his Dusclops, because he still hasn't seen my Drifblim in the back. So if I can use Drifblim effectively as a closer, then I'm going to be able to wrap this up pretty nicely. So I'm chunking down his Dusclops, but he is farming me pretty aggressively. So I kind of make a mistake here, and I sacrifice my Marowak, trying to open Drifblim out up for a closer position. But if I had shielded Marowak, I'd have been able to get off at least a Bone Club, which would have just put down his Dusclops and made him play me with his Marowak against my Drifblim, which would have still had a shield. So he had a Shadow Ball in the back, and I have a shield for that. But I still had 2 shields at this point, so even if I had used a shield on my Marowak, I still would have had a shield for that Shadow Ball, and his Dusclops would have already been dead. But now he's got Dusclops hanging in the back with really, really low health. But in order to take down this Marowak, I need to call a shield bait correctly. So I know he's sending a Bone Club here, trying to shield bait me, because that's really the only way he was going to be able to win with his Marowak. But I think that put me at a little bit too low of health, because I needed to do the Ominous Wind there, so I didn't take another Bone Club. And my Drifblim's just at too low of a health, and those feint attacks catch up to me. So if I had shielded the Marowak, I probably would have won that match. For our third battle, I've gone back to my original team in Poliwrath, Steelix, and Drifblim, and he leads with a Alolan Marowak this time. So this is okay for my Poliwrath, but he switches into his Dusclops. He's been using his Dusclops as a safe switch and to counter my Poliwrath. So I'm going to go back into Steelix, but I messed up my switch, and that put me a little bit behind on energy, more than I would have liked. So I end up taking a Fire Punch instead of a Shadow Punch there. And that kind of messes up the balance between Crunch and Fire Punch. So I'm going to end up taking 2 Fire Punches here before I can get off a Crunch instead of just 1. So not as much shield pressure as I would have liked, just because I was a little slow on that switch, but that's okay. I am going to be able to make it to a Crunch, and then I lose a CMP tie, so I'm going to have to burn my final shield, which I'm okay with doing, because this Crunch is either going to kill his Dusclops, or like he's been double shielding his Dusclops basically the entire match. So I knew I was going to get that shield there, and I make a mistake here and swap into Drifblim. I should have just let Steelix go down, but I was kind of scared of what he had in the back. I hadn't seen it yet. So he's going to Shadow Punch, and I shouldn't have shielded that. And now that my Drifblim is locked in here, he's going to come in with his Bastodon, which he had hit in the back. It was a really, really good play from him, and a really, really smart decision in his team composition. So now my Drifblim's locked in here with the Bastodon, which is not great, and I make a little bit of a mistake, and I could have gotten off that Shadow Ball, but I was a little bit nervous about that Smackdown coming in. So I only hit him with an Ominous Wind. Shadow Ball would have put this Bastodon at way lower health. So if I let Steelix die, I could have put Drifblim out there and then switched into my Poliwrath, which would have been able to eat this Bastodon alive. But instead, right here, I'm just trying to take his energy from him so I can get my Poliwrath in there. I still haven't seen his third Pokemon, so I'm a little bit in dire straits here. I'm going to try to farm up this Bastodon as much as I can. And then right when I sensed him getting to a charge move, he pulled it. So I lost the CMP tie again, and I end up taking a Stone Edge, which is pretty rough. And all I have left is my Poliwrath, and I still haven't seen his third Pokemon. So depending on what that third Pokemon is, and it's Marowak. So my Poliwrath has absolutely nothing to threaten this Marowak. So I just hit the Dynamic Punch, which is stupid. I should have hit Ice Punches, but even in the Ice Punch case, I don't really see a way of beating this Marowak down without, if I had Power Up Punch and then my Bubbles could catch up to it. But there's basically nothing my Poliwrath can do, so he's just going to eat my Poliwrath for lunch with his Marowak and end the battle with 3 Pokemon still alive. So GG Regilope, really, really well played and great close battles. So because of the mistakes that I had made and playing poorly, I am 2-2 going into the final round of the tournament, and I get matched up with Merker88, who is a really, really talented trainer and someone who's very good at battling. So I know I have to be prepared for some really tough battles coming up. Looking at his team, he's got Poliwrath, Girafarig, Claydol, Medicham, Drifblim, and Steelix. So let's get right into the battles. For our first battle, I'm leading with Bronzong and backing it up with Steelix and Marowak. So I actually get a really good lead here, and he leads with his Poliwrath. So Bronzong's going to do really, really good for me in this matchup. And he counts me perfectly, and right as I'm sending a Side Shock, he chooses to switch. and he switches into Driplim, so Psyshock's actually not the worst to land there, so he's going to go ahead and take that. I'm going to go ahead and counter with my Steelix, which against his team is pretty risky because he's carrying double fighters with him in Metajam and Poliwrath, and I've already seen that Poliwrath, so I'm going to try and take a little bit of time with this Drifblim and try to make it back to my switch if possible. So I'm going to send the Crunch and try to take some shields. He's not buying it. He lets his Drifblim die and comes back immediately into his Poliwrath. So I'm debating here, and I end up putting up the shield, which is a great move for me because he's running Dynamic Punch. So I know at this point he and I have the same movesets on our Poliwraths. So I farm up a little bit of extra and hit the Crunch. So I get the shield from him with that Crunch, and he's going to send another Dynamic Punch here. And this is a little bit of a stupid decision. I don't shield, and it happened to be an Ice Punch, so it kind of worked out for me. So now I have a Crunch, and I didn't quite get it off because I lost the CMP tie, so he's going to Ice Punch me again. I have to let my Steelix go, so I come back in with my Bronzong and get a little bit of farmable energy, and I contemplate switching into Marowak here, but instead I decide to go and farm up to a Bulldoze and then swap. So because I did that, now I'm taking a Crunch with my Marowak, and I have a charged up Bulldoze in the back to finish off this Steelix, kind of no matter how this Marowak fight goes. So I have a little bit of courage coming into this because of that Bulldoze in the back. So I'm going to shield a Crunch here and then go straight for the Shadow Ball. So that courage kind of afforded me to go straight for this Shadow Ball. It's a little bit risky, but I know even if I get his shield with the Shadow Ball, which I do, I'm going to be able to make it back to the Bone Club. But this presents a little bit of a problem because now his Steelix is charged up. So Bone Club's going to go through here, and it's not enough to kill. And I end up taking his energy with my Marowak, which is great because now my Bronzong can come back and hit a Bulldoze. So it comes back and straight to the Bulldoze, and that's going to be able to take out his Steelix. For our second battle, I'm going to lead with Drifblim, and I have Steelix and Poliwrath in the back, and he goes ahead and leads with his own Drifblim. So the Drifblim mirror match is a really interesting match. Nobody really wants to take any move from anyone else, and he manages to get off the first Ominous Wind. So I'm going to go ahead and save mine, and then I try to play this. It's a little bit stupid, but I try to build up to 2 Ominous Winds, and I was actually 1 Hex short. So I don't actually have 2 Ominous Winds, and I thought I did. So he's going to go ahead and use the shield, and I actually don't get off the second Ominous Wind. So if I got off the second Ominous Wind, I would have even taken both of his shields or killed that Drifblim. But that's okay. I come back with Steelix, and Steelix is going to be able to eat even a Shadow Ball here. And then I'm going to get to a Crunch. So Crunch is going to come up, and he's either going to have to shield or let his Drifblim go. And he elects to let his Drifblim go. So he's going to come back in, and he comes back in with Claydol, which is actually a really interesting move. It's put me in a tough position. I'm debating on what to do. So I save a Crunch and a little bit extra because I haven't seen his third Pokemon yet. And I have 2 shields left, so I know I can shield an Earth Power or an Earthquake, and it's an Earthquake. So it's a really good shield, and I'm going to be able to build up here. So with that extra energy, because of the Earthquake, I knew I had time to build up to about 2 Ice Punches before he could throw another move at me, and I'll still have a shield. So here we go, 2 Ice Punches. I take his final shield, and then this Ice Punch is going to be able to knock out his Claydol. And it doesn't quite knock out his Claydol, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and take his energy. So this actually helps me out a little bit because now I can farm up, and now I have an Earthquake going into the next match. And I pulled the Earthquake before I saw what it was, which is kind of stupid because it's a fresh Steelix, and I could have farmed up a lot more energy before that Steelix hit a move, and I still have a shield left even if it hit a move. So I end up having to shield this here, and I could have just hit the Crunch and killed this Steelix, but I wasn't quite sure exactly how much it was, so I did 1 more Dragon Tail and hit the second Earthquake, which is going to wipe out his Steelix. So a little bit of choppy play, but it worked out for me in the end. In our third match, I'm going to use the exact same team, but put Steelix as a lead, and he ends up leading with his own Steelix. So this is a little bit of a game of chicken about who's going to throw the first Earthquake. And so I'm going to charge up to an Earthquake, and then I decide to switch into Poliwrath, and I messed up the switch, and I hit Drifblim. So this is not a great situation for me. So I'm going to go ahead and elect to take a Crunch and save my shields. And then he's going to switch into his own Drifblim. So I mess up again here, and I was trying to see if I could get to 2 Ominous Winds, but I knew at that point I wasn't going to be able to make it to 2 Ominous Winds, so I just pulled a Shadow Ball. And I actually spent a shield because I built all the way up to a Shadow Ball, and I wanted to at least take one of his shields. So I spent a shield to take one of his shields, and my Drifblim's going to go down here before I'm going to make it to another Ominous Wind. So a really bad switch there, and then I kind of played it wrong on the back end. So I'm in a really tough spot here. So Steelix is going to come in. Luckily my Steelix has quite a bit of energy, so I'm going to take his final shield with a Crunch. And then I'm just going to let Steelix take whatever move this is. It happens to be a Shadow Ball. And then I'm going to send a second Crunch. So he's going to let his Drifblim go. And then he comes in with Medicham. So there's absolutely nothing I have that could really take down this Medicham. So I get my Steelix out and take a Power Punch with my Poliwrath. And I make another little mistake here. We were talking about after, I didn't know which move was better because I just put Dynamic Punch on my Poliwrath. I had been playing with Power Up Punch, so I was like, maybe Dynamic Punch will give me a little bit of an edge. But after talking with him afterwards, we kind of came to the conclusion that just throwing straight Ice Punches, I would have been able to get off one more Ice Punch at the end of this, which would have been a little better for me, but I still don't think it would be enough to win. So everyone be careful with your switches. Don't get into this position, and I don't make it to that Ice Punch there. So that was the difference between the Dynamic Punch and the Ice Punch. And then Steelix comes in and immediately just gets deleted. So GG Merker, really, really fun battles. I finished the tournament 3-2, and congrats to the 3 winners of this tournament. It was a 3-way tie. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.